All right, we are live. I started a little bit early just to give people some time to come in. So I'm not going to do anything until we hit 2:30 because I know that was the appointed hour. So we're just going to hang tight here for a minute or two. And then I'll go through exactly what we will be doing on today's stream. And I'm going to be recording a video as we do this. So this will be one of those things where we've got a few cuts in between or whatever. But what we're going to do is get the mode here working with the Dreamcast and with the Saturn. I hope with the Saturn. The Saturn's going to be a little trickier, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then I've already taken apart the Dreamcast, and I already tested it once on the Dreamcast, so I know the Dreamcast part is going to work at least. So we will we'll go from there. And Mark Fitch is wondering if you can write to me on Facebook. Mark, the best thing to do would be to join the Facebook group at Lon.TV/Facebook. Andika saw Mad Little Pixel do a video on the Terraonion. Yep, cool, excellent. Well, I'm glad you can join me as well. Yeah, it's going to be the same thing he did. It's actually a pretty simple device. And like I said, we're just waiting until 2:30 to get started because I know that was when the time I had promised it would begin. But what I'll tell you all in the pre-show here is that this is a drive emulator that works on either console. It's not very portable, so especially when you hook it up to the Saturn, it's like there's a bunch of stuff you got to undo to get it in there and redo it. So the Saturn part of this is going to be the biggest effort. And I think actually I will probably leave it in the Saturn after we're done today, and then I may get another one for the Dreamcast. I really do like the way it works. So it does seem to work as advertised. Mark put it in his Saturn. And this Saturn is going to be interesting because I think this might be one of the early ones. I bought this recently like in the last 5 years. And I haven't used it much because my intention was to mod it. But what's nice about this thing is that there's no soldering required, and it will essentially mod your Dreamcast in addition to giving you the ability to load games off a hard drive. So that's pretty cool. Paul Bakewell is here. Welcome. Yeah, one thing I've noticed with this camera is that it distorts some images here a little bit. Arakio says, why not just get a GDEMU for DC? Well, you can get one for the Dreamcast. Maybe I could do that, I guess, couldn't I? Maybe I'll look at maybe something less expensive. What's nice about this is that it does put in the patches for the VGA adapter. So that might be something I may try messing with. Mark says he's got a Model 1 Japanese with the power supply in the lid. This one is a US one, but I think it might have it in the lid also. We'll find out when we take it apart. But the ease of installation here is definitely the story on this one. And we're going to start in about 3 minutes. I just said scheduled 2:30 as the start time, and people don't like it when I start earlier than when I said I would start. So usually I'm late, so today we're early. So we will we'll get going on the thing there. And I'm interested too because it does have an expansion component here. And it has an FPGA on the bottom. So it's got an ARM processor and then an FPGA. So I'm guessing there's probably more they can do with it. I would love for somehow the cartridge slot here to get some love because I don't have the memory cartridge for the Saturn. I know there are some games that take advantage of that. Douglas Coleman is here. And TrapExit makes a good point that getting a legit GDEMU is difficult. Right, there's a lot of knockoffs out there that probably work just as well, but I've heard there's been some issues with it. So yeah, so this will be interesting. So I haven't taken apart the Saturn yet, so you'll be experiencing the Saturn part with me. The Dreamcast, I already tested it on, and we're going to reinstall it in the Dreamcast. Dreamcast, super easy to install this. The Saturn's going to be a little bit more involved. So, and this is my original launch day Dreamcast that I bought. And while we're waiting to get started here, again, I'm waiting until 2:30, you'll notice my modem is a different color than the rest of the case. And the reason is that I bought the broadband adapter, which I later sold because it was worth a lot. It's probably worth even more now. So the modem was sitting away from wherever the console was for some time. So there's a difference in plastic color there. Big Man asks, what's a good HDMI for, let me get started on the Amazon stream here real quick. So somebody just asked, what's a good HDMI for the Dreamcast? I don't know what's a good one, but I will say I bought this pound cable. Let me pull this up here real quick, and you'll see this in action in a few minutes. It's not great, but what it does is it basically takes the VGA and converts it to HDMI. And I think this might be the first generation one, because I seem to see some videos where they had a detachable cable on a newer version. But it's been working okay. But I guess there's some other ones out there that are better, but they're requiring installations and everything else. What I'd love to see is I would like to get a RGB mod, because I have an RGB CRT upstairs. And one of the things that I've been thinking about related to these original consoles is that I don't really want to connect these to my 4K TV because they don't look right, you know? So I kind of like the pure attachment to a CRT television. And if I can get RGB out, then that's the way to go. And actually what you'll see on the Saturn is my Sega Genesis HD Retrovision cable. I got an adapter for it so I could use this on my RGB CRT upstairs. So that's how I'm planning to use the Saturn rolling forward. And the Dreamcast, I'd like to get a similar cable for it. Yeah, the pound cable's not great. It's probably, I think it's the best of the cheapest ones, which doesn't say much. So yeah, I would like to get some better output option. Again, I really would like to go RGB on that one. So yeah, that's my plan. All right, so here's what we're going to do today, folks. I am going to shoot an intro for this video, because what we're going to be doing is kind of the live install on the live stream, but then we're going to have a video that will be like one of my usual ones. So you're going to see, so some of you who are watching, I'm hoping that perhaps I can get some help in the chat room, because I'm just changing some settings around here. Because whenever I do this, I'm recording the video while we're doing the thing. I always get people like, why does he keep saying the same thing over and over again? That's because we do multiple takes sometimes to get things the way I want them to be. So if you see anyone complaining about why am I seeing the same stuff over and over again, it's because we're going to be recording while we do the live stream here. So that's what I'm going to do. So, and Mark is saying, and the HD Retrovision cables on a CRT is a great option for the Saturn. Yeah, I think that's going to be the best option for the Saturn. And I'm actually really excited to start exploring the Saturn a bit, because I've had this Saturn for a couple of years now. I didn't have one when it came out. And I'll tell you some stories about my memories of the Saturn as we get into the video today. But I got one just a couple of years ago because I collected all of the consoles. So I now have, either through the Mister or actually physically, I have most of the major consoles now of the 70s or the 80s and 90s. So I have an Atari 2600, I have an NES, Sega Master System, ColecoVision. I don't have the Intellivisions and that sort of stuff, but I do have some FPGA replications of those. I've got the TurboGrafx 16, which was the PC engine here in the US. I don't have the TurboGrafx CD drive, but now the Mister is really doing that quite well. So I've got all the original consoles. I got a CRT upstairs that I use those with. But lately, I've been using the Mister more often than not, because the Mister I can plug into my CRT TV, get RGB out, and I'll tell you, the NES games look amazing on that CRT. It's like so pure. So that's been kind of the track I've been taking with this. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to shoot the intro to this, and then we'll get into all the nitty-gritty here as to exactly what this thing is about. All right, and we'll go from there. Demon Ultrix wants to know, is there a play button opening on my channel? There is. If you go to my 100,000 subscriber special, there is something. If you look for it, you'll see it. I did do a video unboxing it. So search for unboxing in YouTube. I think you should be able to find it. All right. We are going to, yeah, don't, by the way, Mark Bessert says, Bob is not a fan of the pound. Yeah, don't tell Bob from Retro RGB that I have a pound cable. So hopefully he doesn't watch this video. Okay. because I know he's the guy I go to when I have these questions, but I just needed something for today, so that's why I bought the pound cable. Okay, I'm just gonna shoot an intro of this, and then we're going to put it in the Dreamcast, and then we'll do the Saturn. That's the plan. So we'll do a couple games on the Dreamcast, show you how it works, and then we'll switch over. How's that sound? All right. Okay, I'm gonna do a recording. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV. We are doing a special video today on the Terraonion. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV. We're taking a look today at the Terraonion mode. This is a optical drive emulator for both the Saturn and the Dreamcast. You can only install it in one at a time, of course, so if you want to use it on both, you might want to buy two. And what this does is it basically emulates an optical drive, but you can use flash media with it, whether it's a solid-state hard drive or a USB drive or an SD card, and you can load up all your games on this device and then load them off the original hardware. So if your optical drives are failing or you want to try out some homebrew games, you can do that with this. And what's nice about this device, especially on the Saturn, is that it will let you do this, first of all, without any modification or soldering, but it will also let you play games from other regions without having to do any modifications for region locking either. It's a really slick little device that's been working quite well. And in today's video, we're going to install it in both the Dreamcast and the Saturn, and we're going to look at how it works in both of these consoles. So that's the plan with this. Now, I am live streaming this as I record it, so this video might be longer than my usual ones, but I'm going to put chapter markers into the video that you can find on your player, as well as in the video description, so you can jump to specific parts of this as we work our way through this. And we're going to get into it here in just a second, but I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds, so all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, nor is anyone reviewing or approving what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and check out the Terraonion mode. Okay, so I'm just going to log my clip here, and we'll go from there. And Demon's trying to do a super chat, but they're not letting him. I'm sorry about that, but I do appreciate the offer. And as they say, it's the thought that matters most, and the viewership, so I appreciate it. Okay, so Tony DeRose still has his Intellivision and has a lot of games for it. Awesome. Yeah, I never had the Intellivision. I had some friends that did. It's funny, your friends really determined what you had. So I had friends with the Atari, and then we all got ColecoVisions. And you know, our parents kind of coordinated that, because then we could buy like a bank of games and then kind of swap them around. So we used to like lend games to each other, and we made sure that, like, if I was going to buy a game, my mom would check with the other moms to make sure that somebody else didn't already have it. So we all had different games, and we would just swap them back and forth through our parents as the intermediaries. So that was how we did that. All right. And Brandon Wallace is saying that his Saturn installation was very janky, ended up soldering. Oh my goodness. Yeah, the Saturn I'm a bit nervous about, to be honest. And I'm not sure how it's, I'm going to try not to use the power connector with this one and see if it works. And I'm guessing what's probably going to end up happening is we may forego using the solid state drive and switch over to the SD card that might consume less power. So we'll see how all this goes. Nick MG is here, Recipe Bob is here, Ken is here, and Cedar Lake is here as well. All right, so we're going to step through the hardware real quick, and I'll explain what all this stuff is, and then we'll put it in the Dreamcast. 3, 2, 1. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. This device allows you to connect up 3 different storage devices, and you can use 2 of them. So right here is your SATA connector. We're going to slide a solid-state drive into this in a little bit for the demo. You also have the ability to use a USB drive, and you could run an extension cable out of your console, for example, if you wanted to be able to quickly swap disk images on and off the stick, because it's really hard to get at this once it's inside the console. You also have an SD card slot here for plugging that in. Now, there's a lot of different parts on the board here, and what you use will vary based on what system you have. So the Saturn is going to be a little bit more complicated than the Dreamcast to install. You've got 2 different connectors here depending on the system, the revision of the system that you're plugging in. And there's a bunch of different power connectors here also, again, depending on which version of the Saturn you have. I found the Dreamcast was super simple. There is just a single connector here that this needs to get seated onto after you remove the optical drive, and you're good to go there. But again, the Saturn, I think, will be a little bit more involved, but I think it should be doable for most. Again, no soldering with this, so it's just a matter of getting cables installed and optical drives removed. So far, the only tool I've needed is a screwdriver, and that should be all that you need as well. And what we're going to do, though, is get started here with the Dreamcast. So let's get the Saturn out of the way here for a few minutes, and we will install it in my Dreamcast. Now, before I started shooting the video, I did remove my optical drive already just for the sake of time. So it wasn't that hard. It's a couple of screws. You pull it out, and then you'll be exactly where we are here. So let's get this set up, and we'll start with the Dreamcast. All right. So let me just log that clip. Hardware overview. I do want to watch these real quick, or at least this one, if you don't mind. So I'm just going to play that back real quick, and then we'll get into it. And I'm actually really grateful that I've got a couple people here that have already installed the Saturn one, so I'll know what I need to do versus not. So that will be, excuse me, really helpful. I'm just going to play this back real quick, and we'll get back to the rest of it. 3, 2, 1. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. This device allows you to connect up 3 different storage devices, and you can use 2 of them. So right here is your SATA connector. We're going to slide a solid-state drive into this in a little bit for the demo. You also have the ability to use a USB drive, and you could run an extension cable out of your console, for example, if you wanted to be able to quickly swap disk images on and off the stick, because it's really hard to get at this once it's inside the console. You also have an SD card slot here for plugging that in. Now there's a lot of different parts on the board here, and what you use will vary based on what system you have. So the Saturn is going to be a little bit more complicated than the Dreamcast to install. You've got 2 different connectors here depending on the system, the revision of the system that you're plugging in. And there's a bunch of different power connectors here also, again, depending on which board here. And what you use will vary based on what system you have. So the Saturn is going to be a little bit more complicated than the Dreamcast to install. You've got 2 different connectors here depending on the system, the revision of the system that you're plugging in. And there's a bunch of different power connectors here also, again, depending on which version of the Saturn you have. I found the Dreamcast was super simple. There is just a single connector here that this needs to get seated onto after you remove the optical drive, and you're good to go there. But again, the Saturn, I think, will be a little bit more involved, but I think it should be doable for most. Again, no soldering with this, so it's just a matter of getting cables installed and optical drives removed. So far, the only tool I've needed is a screwdriver, and that should be all that you need as well. And what we're going to do, though, is get started here with the Dreamcast. So let's get the Saturn out of the way here for a few minutes, and we will install it in my Dreamcast. Now, before I started shooting the video, I did remove my optical drive already just for the sake of time. So it wasn't that hard. It's a couple of screws. You pull it out, and then you'll be exactly where we are here. So let's get this set up, and we'll start with the Dreamcast. Okay, I think we're good. And I've already taken everything out, but again, this was really easy to do, so it shouldn't be too bad here. And I also have, I think I'm going to move this over here. I also have the manual up on screen, so we can kind of scroll through this as we go here. So I think I made reference this. So let me start here, and then I'll pick up the chat with you all in a few minutes. All right, so let's start on the Dreamcast. 3, 2, 1. All right, so our Dreamcast here is ready to go, and I've already taken out the optical drive, as I mentioned, so I'm just going to lift off the top here. And the mode just needs to get placed down upon this connector here, and that's all it needs to work. So it's super simple. Now, there is a great manual that they provide. It's on their website. And you can scroll through this here and get all the details as to how to set up the device and get it installed into the various consoles that it supports. But we're going to, for this one, just plop it in because it really is that simple on the Dreamcast once you get all the screws. Let me start this again because I think what I want to do, let me just kind of reference the Dreamcast section of that there. So let me just go look at that real quick, and we'll pick it back up again. Yeah, this is a launch day Dreamcast, by the way. I got this one the day it was released. It was super cool. And it was on $999, right? It was $99.99. It was $99.99, right? That was not the price of it, but that was the day it was released, September 9th, 1999. And I guess I remember the slogan was "It's thinking." It was that was their shtick. Yeah, what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm just going to scroll down to the Dreamcast section, because the Saturn section is like super crazy. So let's go through this. I'm actually kind of nervous about the Saturn, to be honest with you. Okay, there we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, so here is my Dreamcast. We're ready to go with it. 3, 2, 1. All right, so our Dreamcast, as I mentioned, has already been taken apart. And it was very easy, again, to get that optical drive out. And all we're going to have to do is place the mode down on this connector. Now, they do have a great set of documentation that you can download. And this will give you a step-by-step guide as to how you get that optical drive out. But again, the Dreamcast here really is the easiest of them all, and it looks like it'll work with any revision of the Dreamcast as well. You do, of course, want to make sure that you don't have it plugged in when you do this, because we are going to be installing hardware in our Dreamcast. Now, on mine here, I did put down some of these little standoffs that it came with, but I'm not going to remove the sticky stuff here because I do intend on pulling this out in a few minutes and putting it into our Saturn. So what I'm going to do actually before I put this together is install the hard drive into the SATA slot here, and I want to show you what I configured on that drive. So the configuration is super simple. What you need is a Dreamcast folder and a Saturn folder, and then you can put your disk images inside of it. This supports CDI and GDI disk images, and you want to put those into separate folders. And a lot of these games were games that I owned when the Dreamcast was a thing. Believe it or not, my Dreamcast here is still working pretty well, even with its optical drive, but I think it's going to work better now when I install this in there. And that's pretty much it. Now, there's one other file that you'll see here. This is the latest firmware update that I downloaded from their website. So whenever there's a new firmware, you just have to download that and put it on the root directory of your storage device, and it will find it and install the latest firmware on there. And I'm guessing there's going to be features added over time as well. And one of the things that's really exciting about this is that there is an FPGA and an expansion port on here. So I think we're going to start seeing additional features happening down the road. All right, so let's get the hard drive detached. We're going to put it inside the card here, and then we'll boot the Dreamcast up. All right, not perfect, but I will take it. Let me see what you all are saying here. Yeah, so this will work with, I believe, a spinning drive and a solid state drive. So if you want like a 2 terabyte spinning drive might be good for something like this, or you buy a 1 terabyte Samsung SSD or something like that. All right, and I think I'm just going to watch this real quick. It is 2 minutes, kind of long. I might cut it down later. 3, 2, 1. All right, so our Dreamcast, as I mentioned, has already been taken apart. And it was very easy, again, to get that optical drive out. And all we're going to have to do is place the mode down on this connector. Now, they do have a great set of documentation that you can download. And this will give you a step-by-step guide as to how you get that optical drive out. But again, the Dreamcast here really is the easiest of them all, and it looks like it'll work with any revision of the Dreamcast as well. You do, of course, want to make sure that you don't have it plugged in when you do this, because we are going to be installing hardware in our Dreamcast. Now, on mine here, I did put down some of these little standoffs that it came with, but I'm not going to remove the sticky stuff here because I do intend on pulling this out in a few minutes and putting it into our Saturn. So what I'm going to do actually before I put this together is install the hard drive into the SATA slot here, and I want to show you what I configured on that drive. So the configuration is super simple. What you need is a Dreamcast folder and a Saturn folder, and then you can put your disk images inside of it. This supports CDI and GDI disk images, and you want to put those into separate folders. And a lot of these games were games that I owned when the Dreamcast was a thing. Believe it or not, my Dreamcast here is still working pretty well, even with its optical drive, but I think it's going to work better now when I install this in there. And that's pretty much it. Now, there's one other file that you'll see here. This is the latest firmware update that I downloaded from their website. So whenever there's a new firmware, you just have to download that and put it on the root directory of your storage device, and it will find it and install the latest firmware on there. And I'm guessing there's going to be features added over time as well. And one of the things that's really exciting about this is that there is an FPGA and an expansion port on here. So I think we're going to start seeing additional features happening down the road. All right, so let's get the hard drive detached. We're going to put it inside the card here, and then we'll boot the Dreamcast up. Okay. I think that worked. Oops, whoop, I'm almost losing my mic pack here. Hang on a second. Get my, I'm wearing shorts today with a loose pocket. So, all right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put the, so I went with, and I'll mention this when I start recording again, I went with a solid state drive. This is just a 240 gig drive. And some people were asking, why would you use a hard drive versus a USB disk? And I think it's about speed. Even though these things are not very fast in their I/O, you'll certainly get better performance out of a SATA SSD. It'll work with a spinning drive, I believe. That might tax the power requirements a little bit more. And you can get, like those Samsung 1 terabyte drives pretty cheap now. So that might be the way to go, just so you can load up a whole thing on there. And what's funny? When we get into the Saturn, I'll show you, somebody just brought up Usenet, and I found a really neat thread about the Saturn, because the Saturn came out earlier than everyone anticipated, because Sony was about to drop the PlayStation, and Sega kind of reacted to that. So I found a really fun discussion from '99 on Usenet, because Google has that big Usenet archive. So it was kind of neat to just see like reactions to this, and I'll pull this up in a minute. Okay. All right, so let me go over and get my third camera here. So what we're going to do is just pop the hard drive in and then put the card in here and put this Dreamcast back together. That is the game plan. Okay. So Mark says that a 2 terabyte drive will fit the entire Dreamcast library. It's actually pretty amazing when you think about the fact that you could fit, the Sega Genesis, for example, you could fit its entire library, minus the CD images. You could probably fit the whole library in about maybe a gig or two tops, right? And here we've got terabytes 20 years ago. Isn't that amazing? Or 25 years ago. The Dreamcast, by the way, is a real tragedy because it was a great system. It should have lasted longer than it did. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we're going to take out our hard drive here and pop it into the SATA connector. And again, you have a choice, but I'm going to go with the SATA drive here because eventually what I'll probably do is get a large SATA 1 terabyte drive just to leave in the console. And you could probably fit a good chunk of the library there. And then all we need to do is get this connector here lined up with the connector on the board, and that is pretty much the entire installation. It's really that simple. Now, normally you'd want to screw everything down and get the sticky stuff going, but for our purposes right now, we're just going to get this seated and kind of move on from there. I did find the standoffs to be a little difficult to work with as far as getting things to fit in the case properly, but you do have to kind of coax it into place there. But once it's in, and you want to make sure your hard drive is in place. And again, you probably want to screw that hard drive down just to keep it from moving around on you. But it looks like we are good to go. I'm going to put the top of the case back on, and then we're going to power the system up and see how it all works. So let's get it going. I mean, can you believe how easy that was? That's it for the Dreamcast. The Saturn, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. All right, so let me just log that clip. I mean, there's nothing, just put it in. No soldering, no mod chip. Now, one thing with the Dreamcast, and maybe why this is so simple, and this is probably why also that the Dreamcast died, was the fact that somebody figured out how to just make bootable disks. So around about a year after it came out, I think I remember this happening around the summer of 2000, so about a year into its lifespan, the entire copy protection was essentially compromised, and people were just putting disks up on the internet. 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we're going to take out our hard drive here and pop it into the SATA connector. And again, you have a choice, but I'm going to go with the SATA drive here because eventually what I'll probably do is get a large SATA 1 terabyte drive just to leave in the console. And you could probably fit a good chunk of the library there. And then all we need to do is get this connector here lined up with the connector on the board, and that is pretty much the entire installation. It's really that simple. Now normally you'd want to screw everything down and get the sticky stuff going, but for our purposes right now we're just going to get this seated and kind of move on from there. I did find the standoffs to be a little difficult to work with as far as getting things to fit in the case properly, but you do have to kind of coax it into place there. But once it's in, and you want to make sure your hard drive is in place. And again, you probably want to screw that hard drive down just to keep it from moving around on you. But it looks like we are good to go. I'm going to put the top of the case back on, and then we're going to power the system up and see how it all works. So let's get it going. One thing I forgot to point out is that there's 2 buttons. I guess I could just do this. I could just take it off, which I'll probably do. All right. Okay, so that's put together. And maybe what we'll do before we boot it up is test it before I start recording, just to make sure it's all going to work. That's always good to try out first. And let me grab my cable for the HDMI here. Now, if my, so I sometimes have some issues with my video input resetting my vMix software. So if you happen to see me go away, I will be back. It probably won't do it with this adapter that I'm using, but it has done that to me before, so we'll figure that out. And in case you're wondering, I am using the dreaded pound cable. This is not the cable my friend Bob would recommend, but don't tell him. Okay. All right, so we're good to go there. All right, so I think we're ready to go. So I think I'm just going to hit the power button. My fan, by the way, is super noisy on this. Okay. So we're going to, yeah, everybody's popping in. It's okay, it can be late. You can always rewind. Recipe Bob just popped into Amazon and sees that his wife has $200 worth of stuff in the Amazon cart. Well, check out. Do the checkout. Yeah, we have boxes showing up here all the time. I have no idea where this stuff is coming from. Now, I could not find my VMU, so I'm going to have to buy some VMUs. The controller seems to work pretty well. I think I may have had 2 controllers at one point, but I don't know what happened to it. And it's funny, my daughter saw this morning, and she goes, "Where's the other stick?" So I was like, well, honey, there was a time in which there was only 1 stick on the controller back in my day. Okay, so let's power it on. All right, so let's hit record. 3, 2, 1. All right, so let's hit the power button now and see what happens. One thing you might hear is the fan on my Dreamcast. It's seen better days, so it is a little on the noisy side. But here you go. You can see my console is booting up, and we should soon be on the interface here. So let's let this load up, and then we'll have a look at the modes interface. And I got to take a break on this cut because look at my video box here. It's all messed up. So let me see if I can, I'm just going to pop the cable out here. It's working fine on the monitor, but it's just not passing through properly. So I might have to reboot my video system here. Let's see what happens. There's always something that screws up. You know, we may end up just going with the screen because it's not feeding anything in. So what I might do, let me see if I can get it hooked up to my video system directly. I know it's going to work better with my other thing that we're going to hook up in a little bit. All right, got my So I usually hook these things up to my NDI box, just because the NDI box seems to be the most cooperative. I'm just going to switch it off and switch it back on again. And by the way, if you lose me, like I said, you'll see a thing that says I'll be right back if it fails on us. Let's see if we can get this back up again. Yeah, it's always when we do stuff live that things tend not to work correctly, but that's kind of par for the course. So bear with me for 1 second here. I'm just going to try to reconnect to my. There it goes. Yeah, you know what? It must be the interface and how it works with this pound cable. It just doesn't like my thing. So what we're going to do instead is I'm just going to pop this out. See, the problem is if I do this, see, here's the conundrum. If I do this, I lose my loop through. So I think what I'm going to try here is, let me try the other box. The other box I was reluctant to use because this is the one that resets my connection all the time. But desperate times, folks. So let's give this a go and see what happens here. So I'm just going to hook this up real quick. So I do want direct capture on this thing. It's kind of important for this to work. So we're going to swap these out real quick. And hopefully we don't have a system failure, but we get system failures all the time. The good news is that the way I stream now, we should be okay. Okay, so hang on, folks. I just need to wait for my box here to get itself on the network. And there it is. Hopefully it doesn't kill us. So far I'm still on. And you know what's funny? This one, I'm just going to close this out and then we'll try this again here. So let's just close this, and so that the loop through works, but this is not. Okay, so vmix spark, yeah, this one. And this one's like totally dark. It's this, you know what it is? It's this lousy pound cable. Now, if I do this, watch what's going to happen. I'll probably lose my, I'm going to totally lose my stream here when I plug this back in, because that happens a lot. So it's passing it through just fine, but we're not getting anything on the spark. So the next thing I'm going to try, this pound cable has a power input, and I wonder if it needs a little boost. So let's try that real quick. I know I'm asking for trouble here, but let's see what happens. So now I've got power going into the cable. I don't know what the power does, but it doesn't seem to actually. But I think, you know, this is actually a visible screen, so I think we might be able to get by with just the direct connection here. So I may not need all of this. So I think we're just going to go with the direct connection. And so what I'll do is I'll zoom the screen in a little bit, and I'll move the Dreamcast over so at least we can see the Dreamcast is in the shot. I think that's what we'll do here. So let's get that positioned here. I think that's pretty visible. So that should work. Now what I didn't do is I didn't configure the fancy database stuff yet, so that that might be what it's doing. Okay, I'm just going to read some of the. Yeah, the pound cable, not the best, but you know what? It was available and the right price at the time. So, all right, so let's try this again, and I just want to see what that shot looks like on YouTube. So give me one. I'm just waiting for my my stream to catch up here. Well, I've been at this for 40 minutes already. It's amazing how time really just flies by when we're doing these live streams. All right, so let's get this positioned. There we go. All right, right in there. Whoop. Okay. I mean, I could hook up a splitter and go through all this stuff, but you know what? I think it's just easier to shoot the screen at this point. Okay. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we've got the Dreamcast hooked up. Let's hit the power button on it and get things going. I should mention I am using this cheap pound cable just to get things captured for the video, and it's kind of a dimmer output that I would like, so it's not the most ideal way to get your Dreamcast connected. My plan with these is actually to hook them back up to my CRT television upstairs, which is kind of the natural way to play these consoles. And this is the mode interface. Now remember, we had those Dreamcast games already loaded up on that hard drive, and it's found them all here. And we're going to load up a game in a second. What I wanted to do first, though, is go through the options screen. And you might be hearing my noisy fan on the Dreamcast as well, because it has seen better days. So right now I've got the game list mode in list, but I could change it to cover art, and they actually have a database that will be available that you can download to get a much more attractive layout of these games. And if you've used some of these flash cartridges in the past, you know that they're often limited by the power of the system they're connected to. But with the Dreamcast and Saturn being more advanced systems, you can have a fancier interface as a result here. We have the auto region patch set to on, and what we're going to do in a minute is I'll show you a Japanese game that we can load up on this American Dreamcast without any modification. You also have the ability to apply the auto VGA patch, and that's going to be very useful for me at the moment because this pound cable basically emulates the VGA adapter for the Dreamcast, and there were a number of games that would not work with the VGA adapter attached, and this will apply a patch to make them work, although it's a bit iffy as to whether or not the game will work with the patch, but that's built right into the hardware, which is awesome. GD-ROM seek time, I have it set to on at the moment, but I'm going to switch it off just to show you the speed of this thing, because it can emulate the actual time it took for the drive to find things on the disk in case the game is very sensitive to that timing. I have the read speed of the drive set to maximum, again, just to get the best performance. But if you're seeing games that are not behaving properly, you can adjust that here in the menu. There is a reset button on the card that you can get to by popping the lid here and pushing it inside of the console. It's a bit iffy for me to do that, but you can do it. And when you push that button, you can have it either boot back to the menu or just reset the system completely. And then there's some other things you can do with a output signal related to that reset, which I am not doing, but you can do that. Boot BIOS menu, I don't know what that does. Let's take a look at that. Oh, okay. So let me stop there. See how dim it is? That's like what I'm getting out of the pound cable. It's not good. But the menu looks good, so I think that's working there. So I'm going to push that button now and just get back to, let's see, where's the button? There it is. No, it's not. Those buttons aren't working. Let's just reboot it. All right, hang on a second, folks. I'm just going to see what I can salvage from that shoot there. I think what I need to do is actually cut it before that reset thing because I was not clear on that. So let's take a look and see what we had there. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we've got the Dreamcast hooked up. Let's hit the power button on it and get things going. I should mention I am using this cheap pound cable just to get things captured for the video, and it's kind of a dimmer output that I would like, so it's not the most ideal way to get your Dreamcast connected. My plan with these is actually to hook them back up to my CRT television upstairs, which is kind of the natural way to play these consoles. And this is the mode interface. Now remember, we had those Dreamcast games already loaded up on that hard drive, and it's found them all here. And we're going to load up a game in a second. What I wanted to do first, though, is go through the options screen. And you might be hearing my adapter attached, and this will apply a patch to emulate the actual time it took for the drive to find things on the disk in case the game is very sensitive to that timing. I have the read speed of the drive set to maximum, again, just to get the best performance. But if you're seeing games that are not behaving properly, you can adjust that here in the menu. There is Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I can actually make this work as a jump cut. Look at that. See that? It's like super. Reset. Oh, you know what? It didn't save my button on the card. It didn't save my desire to keep that setting the same. You see that? It's like right, it's perfect. So I'm going to have it, we're going to cut there. And what I'm going to do is just make a note on that file to okay, perfect. Okay, so hopefully we're still streaming here. Yeah. So we are good there. Okay. So Frequency Debop wants to know where I bought this, and I got this directly from the Terraonion site, but I'm sure it'll be available in other places at some point as well. All right. So now we're going to pick it up right from here. 3, 2, 1. Now these next two options relate to the reset button that is inside the machine here. There's actually two buttons on the card, and one of those buttons is a reset button, and these settings will determine what happens when those buttons are pushed. You can also boot into the Dreamcast BIOS here if you want. So if you did want to get in there to manage memory and stuff, you can select that option to do that. And then Check Update will install the firmware file that we had put on the drive. But since we are on the current firmware now, we don't need to do that. So let's just load up a game now, and what I'm going to do here is load up Propeller Arena. This was a game that wasn't released. It was due to be released in 2001, and then they decided not to release it after 9/11 because it involves airplanes and buildings. But the game was totally done. It got leaked out there at some point, and somebody, of course, imaged it and put it up on the internet. And we're just going to let this boot up here. And you can see it does seem to load up pretty quickly here versus what it might on a regular disk drive. It's still going to be a bit slow because of the I/O related to the fact that this is a 20-year-old system. What I'm going to do here is just get started. I don't have my memory here, so we just have to start off without one. But we're going to let the game load up here. And again, I'm not pleased with the dull output of this pound cable. So hopefully your screen will look a little better than this. And we could not get the pound cable to interact with my capture hardware here either. So we're going to be a little bit dimmer than I would otherwise like. So let's just go into a quick little thing here. And what I'll do is a quick jump cut so that you can see the gameplay. All right, so we're going to just let things load up here. This is actually a really cool game. All right, Jake, pick it up from here. That's just a note for my friend Jake to do that. Okay, so here is the first battle, and you can see it all is working great here. This was a really cool game, something that I've really enjoyed playing even in these modern times. It's actually a really fun shooting game here. You just basically go after other aircraft similar to yours and try to shoot them down, and they're coming after you as well. Pretty cool stuff here. Let me see if I can get into this behind this plane here. It actually has a really cool mode when you get on somebody's tail that you can see a pretty neat cinematic when you take them down. But this is just one of the games that works. This is a great example as to why you might want something like this, because this game just does not exist as a physical thing that you can purchase. All right, so here we go. We got that lock on there, and you can see how that works. And perfect, it's working just fine. Now, if I want to do the reset, I can just pop in here and push the reset button, and that will bring us back to the BIOS at the moment. But I think this other button will get us somewhere else. But let me go back and reset the shoot. It was going great up until that point there. So let me just figure out a good cut point, and we'll reboot the system. Mark, thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution. And I'm going to do two more Dreamcast examples. Because I want to show a Japanese game and then a game that I know would normally not boot with the VGA cable installed that will here, although the game that I have doesn't actually work. It works like more than it usually would work, but it fails right before it gets into the actual gameplay. But I think it won't be an issue when I have it connected to my other system there. Yes, I have the reset input boot to menu, but it was going to the BIOS there, which was weird. All right, so give me 1 second here, folks. I just want to watch what we just did. Get to by popping the lid here and pushing it inside of the console. It's a bit iffy for me. 3, 2, 1. Let's load up a game now, and what I'm going to do here is load up Propeller Arena memory here. All right, Jake, pick it up from here. That's just a note for my friend Jake to do that. Okay, so here is the first battle, and you can see it all is working great here. This was a really cool game, something that I've really enjoyed playing even in these modern times. It's actually a really fun shooting game here. You just basically go after other aircraft similar to yours and try to shoot them down, and they're coming after you as well. Pretty cool stuff here. Let me see if I can get into this behind this plane here. It actually has a really cool mode when you get on somebody's tail that you can see a pretty neat cinematic when you take them down. But this is just one of the games that works. This is a great example as to why you might want something like this, because this game just does not exist as a physical thing that you can purchase. All right, so here we go. We got that lock on there, and you can see how that works. And perfect, it's working just fine. Now, if I want to do is we're going to jump back to, before I record again, let's see if all these games are behaving this way. So I'm just going to load up the Japanese game here. We're going to come back and do this as a take in a second. Now, this is a Japanese game. And again, I don't have any modifications installed on here. BAMGuy Go does not work with the VGA cable. I don't know about that one. I have to try it. I'm Brown. Thank you for your super chat. I can't send you that A10 Pro. I need it. But here is Ikaruga. Ikaruga, I guess that's how you pronounce it. So let me hit the reset button here. Huh, it keeps going back to the BIOS. I wonder if I'm hitting the wrong button. So let me hit the other button. The other button doesn't do anything. Huh. Because what's funny? Yesterday when I was playing with this thing, it was doing what I just thought it would do. So I'm the Brown. Just so I replied to your comment the other day too. What happened was I have two, but I donated the regular A10 Mini just last week, right after I shot the video, to a local group that needed it, nonprofit. So I just have the Pro now, which I'm going to hang on to because I think there's a use for it occasionally. So I think this thing got like reversed. So let's go back here and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to set that. Oops. And let's go through this again here. Oh, okay. So Aaron Arnold says reset to menu will only work if you have it wired up on the reset pad of the DC. You know what's funny is that for whatever reason yesterday, I mean, maybe I'm just losing it, but I could have sworn that I hit the button and it took me back to this yesterday. I don't know what I did. All right, so I'm going to need to go back and look at that. But yeah, I think I would like to do that. So, I need to go back now and look at the reset language that we just had because, oh no, hang on a second. Oh, never mind. Because I want to make sure I don't steer people in the wrong direction. So let me go back to this here and just add number 5 back in. Good news is this is going much smoother than my usual videos go as far as recording is concerned. All right, here we go, which is kind of the game list mode in list. Seeing games that are not behaving properly, you can adjust. 3, 2, 1. Now these next two options relate to the reset button that is inside the machine here. There's actually 2 buttons on the card, and one of those buttons is a reset button, and these settings will determine what happens when those buttons are pushed. You can also, I can live with that. I can live with what we have there. Okay, so now we're going to do an import game, and we'll do that real quick. All right. So I'm going to do the import game now. So we're going to cut this before we reset the other one. All right. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, next I want to load up an import game. Remember, we've got a US Dreamcast here with a Japanese game now, Ikaruga, one of my favorite shooters, and we're going to just hit the button here to load that up. And because this will do all the region settings for us, we can get that game loaded without the need for any kind of additional modification beyond the removal of the optical drive and the installation of the card that we just put in here. And as you can see here, it is loading. It's telling us it's loading. We've got Japanese text on screen. They certainly wouldn't sell this game in the US without English on it, so here you go, and it all seems to be working pretty nicely. And I have noticed that it does feel a little bit snappier than my optical drive felt. Both of these games were games that I was playing before on optical media, and it does feel like it's loading just a little bit quicker. And again, I have those settings set at their maximum. And if I started to notice things not working properly, I could revert those settings and have it more closely emulate the drive speed of the original. But as you can see here, everything seems to be working great. And when I hook this back up to my CRT upstairs, I'm going to have a very good experience, I think, playing both US and Japanese titles, and even European titles if I wanted to install some of those as well. And there's a lot of stuff that never made it to these shores on the Dreamcast, so this is one of these systems that you could really spend a lot of time exploring. All right, good. So that's the Dreamcast import game. I think that worked. 7 Dreamcast import. All right. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, next I want to load up an import game. Remember, we've got a US Dreamcast here with a Japanese game now, Ikaruga, one of my favorite shooters, and we're going to just hit the button here to load that up. And because this will do all the region settings for us, we can get that game loaded without the need for any kind of additional modification beyond the removal of the optical drive and the installation of the card that we just put in here. And as you can see here, it is loading. It's telling us it's loading. We've got Japanese text on screen. They certainly wouldn't sell this game in the US without English on it, so here you go, and it all seems to be working pretty nicely. And I have noticed that it does feel a little bit snappier than my optical drive felt. Both of these games were games that I was playing before on optical media, and it does feel like it's loading just a little bit quicker. And again, I have those settings set at their maximum. And if I started to notice things not working properly, I could revert those settings and have it more closely emulate the drive speed of the original. But as you can see here, everything seems to be working great. And when I hook this back up to my CRT upstairs, I'm going to have a very good experience, I think, playing both US and Japanese titles, and even European titles if I wanted to install some of those as well. And there's a lot of stuff that never made it to these shores on the Dreamcast, so this is one of these systems that you could really spend a lot of time exploring. Okay, I can live with that. And the last one I'm going to do is, because I remember specifically that NBA Showtime would never load on a VGA adapter. And it will load here, but I can't actually get into the game. It locks up. And it's not because of the mode. It's because it doesn't like the patch. But at least we can demo that it, if the game is working properly, it'll do that. All right. So, by the way, anyone in the chat, I would love to know if there are any decent RGB cables for Dreamcast, and where can I get one? I am dying for one of those because I want to hook this up to my TV upstairs. My plan for my CRT upstairs is to have the modern consoles that were designed for CRTs, namely the Dreamcast, the PS2, the PS1. I want all of those RGB into my TV, and then I'm also going to have the Mister up there RGB'd in as well for the other consoles, just to save space and aggravation. But we're starting to get to a point now where we can really consolidate libraries, and that's been something I've been really interested in exploring. All right, so the last thing we're going to try out here is this game, and I'm almost positive, because I remember I had bought the VGA adapter, all excited that I could hook this up to my fancy CRT HD TV, and I couldn't play NBA Showtime on it. Let me see if this is it. Yeah, perfect. Okay, this is definitely one that doesn't work. Okay, oops, back to me here. 3, 2, 1. All right, next we're going to try out a game that I know doesn't work with the VGA adapter. And remember, we've got this pound cable attached here, which is essentially emulating that. And if we go to load up the NBA Showtime game here, which never would boot because it would detect that adapter, as you'll see here in a minute, it will actually get a little further along than it normally would with one of those adapters attached. So here we go. We'll wait for the game to load up. But usually right when you got here, it would tell you that this game's not compatible with the VGA adapter. But now, maybe, there we go. We're getting past that point, and we can actually see the game start up. Let me get through some of these initial screens here, and I will show you that it's working, sort of. All right, let's get through this real quick here. Yeah, and Aaron, the other thing that I'm having with this is that it's not actually loading the game. So it locks up after I get through the load screens here. And I'm just going to, and for Jake who's editing, we're going to start up in just a second here. I'll let you know when. Okay. I'm just going to go through the... But I think the fact that this actually gets this far at all is pretty good. All right, Jake, pick it up from here. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we're going to go and just get a team selected here. But again, this is working with this adapter installed, and it wouldn't work before with one of these VGA things attached to the back of the Dreamcast. Let me start again here. Jake, start from here. 3, 2, 1. All right, so here we are selecting our team. And as you can see, we're able to get into the menus here and start messing around with stuff. However, this game doesn't appear to work past this point. So there will be games that will give you some trouble perhaps and not get through their loading screens or whatever, but others that are more, let me start again. Let me go back and just add this clip here. I think I'll have him salvage some of the footage and then we'll go from there. You know, let me pick this one up from the start because this is not going to work. So let me just kill this and reboot. Yeah, so that's as far as I get with this one. But I think the fact that it gets to where it is actually pretty good. So I'm going to be doing this all over again. So if you are wondering why I'm doing this all over again, it's because I screwed up the take. All right. So let me see where I left off. Okay. 3, 2, 1. So now I want to take a game that doesn't work with a VGA cable and load it up using the mode because it can patch the game through its hardware to get it to work and have it ignore the fact that we have one of these adapters installed. Again, we've got the pound adapter here that is converting that VGA to HDMI. NBA Showtime is the game we're going to load up, and this would never get too far. Like you'd get to the initial screen here, and then right after the game kind of started loading, it would tell you that it wasn't compatible with the VGA. And as you'll see here, as it begins to load up, we can get a little further than we could before with it. So let's let this load up here. Now typically this is about where I would get that warning message, and it basically would not load until I plugged it into a CRT or S-video source. But as you can see here, we are getting into the game. My only issue with NBA Showtime is that although I can get to the menus to start configuring my team and everything, I can't get farther than that. What happens is that it basically locks up as it's loading the screen for the actual gameplay. So I think this is going to get fixed as they keep tweaking the firmware. These patches for VGA are sometimes a little problematic on certain games, but given that we've got that FPGA on board, I think they can probably work out individual issues for individual games as things roll forward here. But as you can see, we can get a lot further in NBA Showtime than we otherwise would. All right, I think that'll work. There we go. Okay, yeah. Well, I know I've got a lot of, Mark saying, I apologize for using a pound, or yeah, Mark is saying that. I know the hate I will get on the pound cable. But it works. You know, I hooked it up to my OLED TV. Again, my big issue with it is that it's so dim, right? It just doesn't give me a very bright image. But you know, my intention really is to plug this back into the CRT upstairs. So, all right, so we're going to go with the VGA patch there. And I think we're pretty much done with the Dreamcast. There, you know, what's nice about this is that there's not a lot of menus to sift through. It's pretty basic. So that is how that works. All right, so now we are going to install the Saturn cable. And I'm going to just change my recording format here to something that consumes less space on my hard drive. So let me switch to that. And I'm going to switch this off. And we're going to get going on the Saturn now, everybody. Wish me luck. I don't think it's going to be that hard, but there's a little bit more to do with the Saturn. Okay. All right. System is powered down. I have power. Okay. I think we're back. Hopefully. Yeah, this was one of my Comcast issues, which are going away soon because I finally convinced them that I should be a Comcast Gigabit Pro subscriber. So I'm getting, it's happening, folks. I signed all the paperwork. We are getting a 2 gigabit connection. So it is on. All right, so we're just going to cut here and go like that. All right, here we go. Okay. So we'll be back. Now the good news is that because of how I am streaming now, see normally the stream would have just dumped everybody out. But I am streaming through Amazon. They have a live streaming multi-thing. And because I'm using that, I can have it put up a slate that you saw there. So when I drop out, it keeps you all on the stream. Because usually YouTube just dumps you after a certain length of time. So that's that. All right, so I'm just going to see where I left my last clip off at. All right. So now we're going to do the installation for the Saturn. All right. And we're going to have Jake kind of figure out how to edit this part together when we do the actual thing there. Yeah, so just so everyone is aware, Gigabit Pro from Comcast is a 2 gigabit symmetrical fiber optic connection. So I'll have 2 gigs up and down, and I just have to redo all of my home networking in order to get the full speed out of it. But it's going to be a big improvement, and hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it works. I'm sure it's going to. And what's cool is that I should be able to stream out at a much higher bit rate and resolution. So right now I'm doing 720p. And I'll be able to, so my overall plan is to, because all these cameras I have, they're not great cameras, but they do 4K. So we'll switch the recorded videos to 4K, and then I'll probably do some other stuff with the stream. Maybe stream out 4K, why not, if I have the bandwidth, right? So that's it. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Saturn, and what I am also going to do is pull the manual up on screen here so that we can be sure to hook everything up properly. Now my hope is, just for the sake of time, that we won't need to use the additional power cable. So let me just scroll over to the manual here real quick. I'm just going to pull it back up on my screen. It's funny, this PDF like really is like hammering my little MacBook here. Oops, that's the wrong one. Bear with me for 1 second here. We're just going to get that mode manual up on screen. And I'll show you what I'm looking at here. So let's get through this. Now, I don't know which Saturn I have. What I do know, maybe some of the experts in the chat can tell me. What I do know is that my serial number is pretty low on this. This is... So this is an original one, the MK8000, and the serial number is like 23,848. So I'm guessing this one's pretty early in the life cycle, and we won't know until we crack it open exactly what it is or what it has on it. So here is the Saturn instructions. So we're going to flip the Saturn over and remove the 5 screws holding the bottom of the case. I did take the discs out already. I did going to flush out the power supply here just to get that going. And yeah, I think we'll pick it up from here, and we'll go from there. Okay. 3, 2, 1. All right, now it is time to take apart the Saturn and install the mode inside of it. Now this is a little bit more involved, and one of the things that they do have on their website is, again, a great set of documentation for getting this installed on the Saturn, just because you're going to encounter different scenarios based on what your Saturn is. Now mine is one of the earlier US versions, so hopefully everything will work properly, but what I'm going to do now is just start going at it here and taking it apart. Now if you're watching the recorded version of this video, I will have the full live stream posted as a link down below, so you can watch this entire process in real time, because I expect, given my lack of skills with hardware, that this might take me a while to get going properly. So just be on the lookout for that, and hopefully all will go smoothly here as we take apart the Saturn to get into it. All right, so I'm just going to let the recording roll here, and I just need to get that screws out. This one right here that needs to come out. And one of the screws is missing already, so that was good. Oops, all right. So right now I should have 5 screws, and I got another one over here. I have to take off the door here on the back. And I'm also going to keep an eye on the chat room here. And yeah, if it's super early, the power supply will be in the lid, and that will be a bit of a easier install, I think. So I don't think you can install the power adapter with the, there we go. You can install, if it's in the lid, you won't be able to install the power adapter that they have. And it looks like, it actually does look like my system has the power supply in the lid. All right. Yep, it's a lid system. Okay, so I'm going to pick it up from here, and this will be a fun project for Jake. He's going to have to figure out how to edit all this. So let me find the section of the manual here. So this is a lid power supply on this one. And, okay, flip it, I'm just reading through the, okay. 3, 2, 1. Jake, pick it up from here, 3, 2, 1. All right, so I've got the lid off of my Saturn, and mine is actually a really early version, so my power supply is in the lid here, which is going to make things a little bit easier. What I do need to do, though, is disconnect the power supply from the system board here so that we can get everything taken apart. So I'm going to just disconnect that power supply. Now, because my power supply is in the lid, I am not going to be able to make use of the power connector that is an optional install piece. So your Saturn might require that optional piece, and again, I would refer to the manual on that. All right, so let me get this, all these pieces out, because I have to disconnect the entire lid here. So yeah, I ended up with a real early one here. And they have this like cable like wrapped around. This thing's like super installed here. So I've got 2 connectors. So I'm guessing if I have 2 connectors, I think I have the 20 pin. Is that right, everybody? That guy does not want to come out. So this is like a 25-year time capsule. So this was made in '95. Yeah, it's like wrapped around that thing, so I got to take this thing off. So this whole metal plate has to come off as well. That's why this is more of a project. You know, I'm going to leave this on for now. I think if I can get that cable out, I'm just trying not to take as much. Well, you know what? It's going to need to come out, isn't it? Because that whole metal thing has to come off. All right, so let's put this aside over here. And we're going to need to disconnect. There we go. Get that out. These cables have been in here for so long that they do not want to come out very easily. Okay. All right, so now we got the lid disconnected. And we're going to very gently remove this cable here. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me go back to the manual here, and we'll see what it is telling me to do next. So let's pull up the screen. So it says to disconnect any cables and data ribbon cable from the Saturn optical drive. So we've done all that. Oh, it comes right off just like that. And we got to take this ribbon cable out as well. So let's get that ribbon cable disconnected. There's a ton of shielding on this as well. All right, so that ribbon cable is off. So I just, so it came off, here, let me just repeat what I just did. So it came off super simple on here, so that's it. Now we're done with this. This is no longer, I don't believe we're using any of this, because this is the entire optical drive component. Look at how complicated this is. Isn't that crazy? And we haven't even hit the big stuff yet. Okay, so we're going to lift the drive out. Note how many connectors are on the lower left of the CD-ROM. If you have a single 5-pin connector, you have a 21-pin Saturn. If you have 2 connectors, which we do, then you have a 20-pin Saturn, right? Because we had this connector, and we had, actually we have more than that. We have, this is the LED connector. So let me see what it says here. If we have a single 5-pin connector, you have, okay, we don't. This is a 4-pin connector here. So we have a 4-pin connector, and we have a 2-pin, which I believe it must be this one. No, there's actually, I think, did John Riggs have the same one that I had? Because I saw him kind of struggling with this, because I just have a single 4-pin here. So let me go and see what the chat room is saying. Do not, okay, I don't have to do that. Okay, just unscrew the pegs on the sides, and okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm good. So I don't have to, thank you, Aaron. Yep, so you don't need to remove the plate. Do not remove the plate. Okay, perfect. So I have a 20-pin Saturn. Okay, so let me pick this up from here. All right. And let me actually, I'm going to kind of replicate this for Jake. Actually, I'll pick up from here. 3, 2, 1. All right, Jake, pick it up from here. So as it turns out, I have a very easy Saturn to work on. Because it's one of the earlier ones, I don't have to go through a lot of the steps that the manual details. So what you have to do after you take the optical drive out, which was very easy to do, is just remove these standoffs here. And these are all accessible without having to take the plate off. So this is going to, for me at least, be a lot quicker. For other folks who have newer Saturns, this may be a more involved process, but for me at least, this is all I'm going to need to do. Now this early one is a 20-pin Saturn, so that is the ribbon cable attachment I'm going to put this cable into when we attach our node device. So let me get these standoffs removed and we'll figure out what the next step is. All right, so let's get this one out here. Stand up here and see what that screw is. That one's being a little temperamental. That one's just kind of caught behind the So Aaron has gone through about 100 installs at this point. So he's done a lot of these. Yeah, the screw is really in there. It's always one screw that like gives you the hardest time, right? And I think it's just due to where it's situated here. I can't get a grip on the screw. It's not stripping at least, but it's just the nature of how the plate is installed here. My screwdriver's having a hard time. There we go. Did I get it? Now I'm risking stripping that screw. Why is there always one screw that gives me such a hard time? We got it. Perfect. All right, it is out. Yeah, this one does not want to give up its standoff there. Okay. And the fun thing about this project is that there's always a screw left, or two. In this case, probably 4. Yeah, so this standoff is like super hard to get out. Yeah, and thank you, Aaron, for your help. That saved us a lot of time. And I just got to coax this thing out of here because it can come out. It just needs to get wiggled out the right way. Uh-oh. There is always something, right, folks? Yeah, this one's just kind of stuck under that shield. So as soon as I can get it coaxed out, we can move forward. I think I might just try to grab the shield with this thing here. I don't like the tension I'm putting on everything here. One of the things you should never do, which I am doing right now, is forcing things, and that is not a good idea. It does not want to come out. Yeah, so it's all fun and games until Lon gets electrocuted, right? So we got to be very careful about not electrocuting myself. Let's see. The good news is everything is disconnected here, power-wise. That thing's really in there. So I'd hate to have to take this whole shield off just to get this piece out, but this thing is like it's like stuck in here, and there's not a very easy way to coax it out of that. Even though it looks like it should go, it just doesn't seem to want to go out. Let's see if we can get it. I wonder if there's a way I can just loosen up this end of the shield. So that piece comes off here. It's attached to that. I'm just going to unscrew this a little bit just to loosen it up a little bit. And that, there we go. That should give us a little bit more leverage here. And I can screw it back down afterward. This is why you never hire me to install hardware. All right, there we go. And you know what I should do? I left it upstairs. I have a battery to install in here also. Okay. There we go. Okay. We are done with the shielding. So let's see what the next step is. Joe Herzog said, it takes a lot of amps to kill me. That's good, at least. Yeah, I think it's good about electricity that if you can get a good shock and learn, appreciate what it is without it actually killing you, it's always a good thing. Okay. All right, I think we're good. Okay. So, what's the next step? So let me go back to my manual. All right. Yeah, so what's great is that I did not have to do any of this stuff. So normally you'd have to take the whole power supply off, take that shielding off just to get those, just to get those things off of here. Hang on, let me go back to the manual. It's funny, this manual is killing my little MacBook. This is the MacBook I use for the wrap-up and stuff. It sits on the desk here. It's just like getting hammered. Because it runs Keynote, which is what I use for my weekly wrap-up show. Okay, so let's go back and scroll down to the page I was on. I know what I'm supposed to do now. I think it's really, we're at the point where we would just get everything hooked up, but let's take a look here. Yeah, we're super lucky that this was all it took. Okay, so we don't need to do any of that. So what you do is you take the plate off just to get those standoffs removed. Reinstall the metal plate, which we did. Controller data ribbon cable and secure it with 8 screws. Okay, so now we're going to put the mode in. And what I will probably do now, so this is how we're going to get it situated. I'm going to put that other standoff in. I'm not going to stick it down just yet, just in case I want to do some more with the Dreamcast, but I'm going to put in, I left one of the standoffs off because it was not fitting into the Dreamcast properly. And we'll just pop that into here. Okay, so now we've got everything situated. All right, so now this is a 20 pin. So this goes in to here. And I'm just going to check the manual to make sure we've got the pins. I'm guessing that this is the right way for it to go. I'm going to rely on my friend Aaron here. Okay, so let's get this installed. Now I have a 20 pin. All right, so I think what I'm going to do from here for the video is just remind everybody where we're at. So we're going to reattach all of the cables here. And then I'm guessing that this cable is going to plug in there. Yeah, so I think what I'll do is, I got to loosen this tape up so it'll fit. All right, so where did we leave it off last time? Yeah, we'll start here. Okay. Oops. All right, give me 1 second, folks. I'm just going to realign my recording here. Back to this. Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we got everything going here. Again, I was really fortunate that this is one of the earlier consoles. So all I have to do now is just get these cables reconnected. Again, this is a 20 pin, so this cable just snaps right in there. We're basically taking all the cables that would normally be attached to this system and putting it into the mode here. And the mode is going to figure out what it is, whether it's a Saturn and what revision of Saturn it is, along with whether or not it's a Dreamcast. And that's what's so cool about this, is that if you have everything hooked up properly, it is pretty much a plug-and-play scenario. So what I'm going to do now is just get the rest of the cover here reattached, and when I am done, we are going to boot the Saturn up for the first time, and hopefully it works. Okay, so let's log that real quick. And your pin 2 is in the lid. Okay, right, which is this one. Let's see. So I'm looking at this. Oh, because this is the LED. My pin 2 is in the lid. So what's this one? Oh, I see. Does that go in? Where does this one go? That goes back down on the board here, I think, right? I don't think I have another pin. I think I just have the 4 one here, right? Yeah, so the one with the ring on it. Oh, there it is. Okay, right. Okay, so that goes on there. So let's put that into place here. Yeah, I think what I might actually do in this video is just, this is definitely not a how-to video at this point. So I think we're going to do this a little differently. Okay, so this pin is going to go into, and I got to resecure that to the board after we get that installed. So let me get that going here. So I think I may actually do another take here about the installation process. And I'm assuming these cables only go in one way, is that right? Yeah, they're keyed, right? I think so. Okay. So I'm just going to, let me zoom in on this so I can make sure that I am installing this correctly, because I was not anticipating having experts who can help me as I do this here. So, so it won't go in, just to make sure I put this in the right way. This cable, if you can see it, I am putting in like this. So I can't tell if this is keyed to prevent me from putting it in the wrong way. I think it, yeah, oh yeah, it is. Okay, perfect, it is, okay. What would we do without keyed cables? Okay, Ken Driggers, thank you very much for the super chat. Loves these live with the warts and all. Excellent. Well, I appreciate your support. I really do. Thank you. And let's put this in here. And I'm guessing this is like a grounding cable, right? So, or is this just secured that way? It's not grounded. Yeah, it's nothing connected to it. All right, so let's just attach that screw again and get that in place. But it's always good when you have parts left over, and you're supposed to have parts left over. Okay, and I really appreciate, oops, oh no, I just lost a screw inside the thing. Oh my goodness. Hang on, folks. Of course, it goes right in there, doesn't it? Where did it go? Let's see if I can get it to shake out here. Hang on a second. Okay, we got it out. Crisis averted. Okay. I'll tell you what, it takes a lot of engineering to make something like this. I mean, that's what these Terraonion guys amaze me, is that they make some really, the stuff they make just is amazing in that it does things that would normally require a ton of soldering and other difficult things, especially for people like me that are not, you know, I know a lot about this stuff, but I'm more of a consumer than I am a maker. I got the right screw here, yeah. So it's amazing to me just like how hard it is to make something like this be so easy to use. So I'm just trying to get this in place here. So Eric says, not sure how much I missed. I just had to clean up a mess from my 3-year-old made in the, ooh, yeah, I've had messes lately. It's my 3-year-old also. It's hard, you know, you think like you know how to go to the bathroom, but it's hard to teach somebody how to go to the bathroom, right? So I feel your pain on that. All right, so that's connected. We're going to attach this up here. And then we just need to put this in here. And it's going to wiggle around a bit in here, but I think it's, for now, it's going to be fine. And I'll put this right here. Okay. And then we just have to attach the power cable when it goes back together, which I will do last. So I think I'm going to reshoot. I'm going to reshoot this because I really can't be a good help to anybody based on the fact that I lucked out with the Saturn that I have. So I think I just may show it like installed and talk about how easy it was, for me at least. Okay. So I want to go back to where we left off before on my thing here. And let me go and just edit this real quick. So yeah, you know, when it comes to bathroom stuff with kids, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take it from here. That's how I'm going to do this. So I was planning to like have it like do a step-by-step on the Saturn, but I think my experience is going to be the exception and not the norm. So I think we're going to just kind of roll with it this way. 3, 2, 1. All right, now it's time to move on to the Sega Saturn. And one of the things that I realized as we started taking it apart is that I actually lucked out because I have one of the very early models of Sega Saturn. And as a result, the installation process for me, because this is an early model, was super simple. And I was going to do a whole play-by-play as to how to get the Saturn installed. But because my experience is likely going to be very different than what it might be for a bulk of Saturn owners out there, I'm going to refer you over to Terraonion's YouTube page where they do have some videos showing different Saturn installation scenarios and also the manual that's really helpful for this because I was able to get this installed with my fumbling probably in about 20 or 30 minutes or so. So my experience, again, is not going to mirror yours, but it was super easy. Do read the manual, though, because there are some things that you could potentially screw up both with your mode or with your Saturn. So I do really suggest you take your time and really look at what you're doing just to be safe. But again, mine was easier because it is one of the early models. So what I'm going to do now is get the power supply reconnected, and we're going to boot this up and see how it works. All right, I think that works better. All right. Yeah, so Eric's Variety Channel is talking about, if you go and look at that manual, it's amazing how exactly, because there's so many iterations of the Saturn that came out. It's pretty remarkable that they were able to make this just work with every version. I just need to reconnect that power cable, and then we'll get this thing back together. Yeah, I was excited for the Sega Saturn component more so I think than the Dreamcast, just because you know the Dreamcast you could burn discs or something, right? But the Saturn, it was never easy to do that. Okay, so we are back together. Okay. Now my Saturn, I don't have a good controller for my Saturn. So I've got this, apparently the one I bought just came with an aftermarket one. So I ordered one of the new, I think it's so awesome that there's a market for this. There's a new, and give me a second, I'm just going to switch out my NDI adapter here too. There is a new cable from Retrobit that I bought, and that is coming in. So I'll have like a, you know, kind of a replica cable that I will be able to use. So I'm super excited about that. All right, so we're going to hook the monitor, loop it in that way, and then I've got a different cable. So what we're going to be doing, if you're watching on Amazon still, we are going to be using some HD Retrovision cables and my RetroTink 2X, which has been recently replaced with a new version, but this one is going to give you the same experience, more or less. So here, let me get the overhead back here so you can see what we're hooking up to it. So I've got the HD Retrovision cable plugged in here. And then what's nice about this thing is that it's going to take the 240 video and double it to 480. and that's going to go into the NDI box. And this should work better than the pound cable just did. And these retro tanks are awesome. And not just for retro gaming, they're good for VCRs and all sorts of other stuff. So I highly recommend them because this thing has been great for me. I mean, I have used this all the time. And I used to have this really expensive scaler that I used to use, but now I'm using the RetroTank 2X. And it has been nothing but a great experience. All right, so we're going to hopefully get the NDI box back up. And I got to connect power to the RetroTank. And I've got some USB power kicking around down here on the floor. So let's run it up here. And when I connect the RetroTank, we should have color bars coming up to the display here. And in addition to the RetroTank, we have the HD RetroVision cable. Oops, just lost the whole package there. Hang on. There it goes. Good. It's working as expected now. The HD RetroVision cable, and this was for the Sega Genesis, but then I got an adapter so that it works with the Saturn also. So these RetroVision cables are probably the best ones out there by far, but they're also they're also expensive. So if you don't have to buy a new cable and just get the adapter, that's often a good way to go. So that is what I did. So we're just going to plug that into the back there. And what I'm going to do also, if I lose you all, I will be right back. Like I said, I sometimes have drop-offs with this. All right, where is... So that spark now is not coming back on at all. It's like it's been blackballed by the rest of the network here. Hang on one second. I love these spark boxes, but they are the bane of my existence sometimes because they don't always... It's like it gets blackballed by the... Here it goes. By the system, and then it never comes back up again. Okay. All right, so now I've got good capture from the RetroTank, so that's good. So now I've got my super, super lousy aftermarket controller here that we're going to connect to the Saturn. Aaron says, if it doesn't boot right away, you may be on old firmware. Okay, yeah, I did install the late. So yesterday when I tested it on the Dreamcast, I installed the latest firmware. So I think we should be good on the firmware. And what I'm going to do real quick before I connect power is just make sure that I have the drive is seated properly. Yeah, we're good. Okay. To be honest with you, I might just leave the screws off of this. And we'll connect this up. All right, and let's grab the power cable. And this is all right. The moment of truth. So hopefully all will be good here, but let's see. And it may be a little delayed in getting the video to the screen, so we'll see how it comes together. All right, let me just check and see where I last left off on my last clip. Okay. And the Saturn works, by the way. I did test that. 3, 2, 1. All right, now it's time to move on to the Sega Saturn. And one of the things that I realized as we started taking it apart is that I actually lucked out because I have one of the very early models of Sega Saturn. And as a result, the installation process for me, because this is an early model, was super simple. And I was going to do a whole play-by-play as to how to get the Saturn installed. But because my experience is likely going to be very different than what it might be for a bulk of Saturn owners out there, I'm going to refer you over to Terraonion's YouTube page where they do have some videos showing different Saturn installation scenarios and also the manual that's really helpful for this because I was able to get this installed with my fumbling probably in about 20 or 30 minutes or so. So my experience, again, is not going to mirror yours, but it was super easy. Do read the manual, though, because there are some things that you could potentially screw up both with your mode or with your Saturn. So I do really suggest you take your time and really look at what you're doing just to be safe. But again, mine was easier because it is one of the early models. So what I'm going to do now is get the power supply reconnected, and we're going to boot this up and see how it works. Okay, ready everybody? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, here's the moment of truth. I'm going to hit the power button, wish me luck, and hopefully nothing bad happens. All right, no smoke. Perfect. Now mine is missing the battery, so I do have to get my battery installed, but I think what I'll do is go back to my youth here, and we'll just have it be 1994 all over again. And the best part is that I'm able to get the direct capture here working off of the RetroTink device, so we should be able to see things here. And yeah, let's let this load up. And there we go. We got the mode popping up here on screen. And we should be able to go in and start selecting stuff. So here we go. I am seeing some weirdness on the video, and I think it's just due to my capture hardware. So I may just stick with the on screen here for a minute. Let's go into the options, though, which is the wrong button here. Hang on. I think I might do this again. So options is what? What's the So I have this lousy controller, so I don't know what is what. Okay, C. Okay, there we go. I'm going to stop this, and we're going to do this take again. What I am noticing, I'm going to force it NTSC. It is a little flaky. It looks okay on the capture. This is probably just due to how the video is coming out on my thing here. Okay. How does that look to you all? Does it look okay? It actually looks okay. It's funny, it's flickering like crazy on my monitor here, but I think it's just the nature of my monitor. Oh, it's 480i. Okay. So can we force it out of that mode? Like the 240p, or that's not how this works? Because my Genesis doesn't do this. All right, so let's turn it off and turn it back on again. I'm just going to redo what we just did. It does work, which is good. Okay, so the mode menu is 480i, so it's going to flicker a little bit, everybody. And thank you to Aaron for that help. Games will be 240p. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's try this again. 3, 2, 1. All right, here's the moment of truth. We're going to hit the power button here, and hopefully nothing smokes here. And here we go. Looks like we are up and running. I don't have a battery installed in my Saturn at the moment, so we're just going to have it be the good old days of 1994. Now, as I'm live streaming here, I've got some really helpful folks in the chat who are letting me know that the Saturn menu for the mode right now is 480i, but the games will be 480p. So if you see some flickering on screen, it's just due to that. But as you can see here, the menu is loading up just like it did before. It actually looks pretty similar to what it looks like on the other system. And I'm just going to hit the C button here to jump into the options. And you can see we've got a similar option for the game listing. I'm going to keep the auto region patch on. We're going to try a couple Japanese games in a few minutes. It's going to disable the lid switch because we do have the ability to push one of those onboard buttons to swap discs out. I've got mine set to NTSC for the video mode. If you've got a PAL console, obviously you would select something different. We have those two reset options. We can boot to the BIOS menu. And then again, if we had firmware to install, we would do that here. It looks as though when you install the firmware on one system, it will apply it to the other as well. So far here, so good. So let me go back and let's load up a game. Let me start with a little holiday cheer here. Let's do Christmas Nights into Dreams, and we'll see how it all loads up. And there we go. Our Saturn splash screen is splashing, and we'll let it come up here and see what happens. My output here is a little dim. It just could be my video capture hardware that we're using, so definitely ignore that. We'll set the date and time to 96. That's fine. And let's see what happens. All right, I'll put some audio up for you all too. Let me just turn it down because right now I can see it's blasting. So I'll turn it way down here.
Christmas decorations.
There we go. We got FMV going, it looks like.
And people are looking for presents for their loved ones. Among them are Elliot and Clarice. They all look rushed. That gentleman, that lady, that old man. Why do they have to walk that fast? In the crowd, they feel something.
Okay, I'm just going to turn it down a little bit so I can hear it just slightly without it picking up on the mic.
The streets look so beautiful.
How do we get past the
most
screen here? Let's see.
cheerful time of the year.
Yeah, this controller is like totally shot. I got to like really push the buttons down on it. So, okay. Okay, so we got the game loaded up here. Let's hit the start button and jump in. Now, hang on a second. Let's go through this junk. I don't have a battery on here either, so this is going to be an ongoing theme here as we shoot the video. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, so here we go. The game is up and running. It loaded up without too many issues. We had the FMV going at the outset here, and it seems like we've got the ability here to play Saturn games just off of that SSD that we have installed. Pretty cool stuff. Let's check out some other things. Was this game like a freebie, or was like one of these like really inexpensive things? What's funny is these games just don't hold up these days, do they? Right? Like things looked so much better to my 1995 eyes than they do today. I'm just going to see if I can adjust the brightness on this. Give me 1 second here. That's a little better. Just want to wait for it to load back up again here. That looks better, doesn't it? Okay. All right. So let's reset real quick. I really wish I bought the Saturn back in the day. So I'll give you my Sega Saturn story. I was a 3DO guy. I had a 3DO. And then, you know, the scuttlebutt. So back then, you know, we had the internet back then. And let me show you some fun stuff here. So this is from Google Groups. And by the way, people on Usenet used to be a lot more polite than they are now. Look at he like flirted out his little thing. But this is like the rumor mill. So this came out of the blue. So what happened was it was supposed to be released in like September. And then all of a sudden in March, it's coming out, right? So everyone was talking about this on the Usenet groups. And this guy's like, I know this is probably nothing, but my guy at the Electronics Boutique is telling me that the system's coming out. And when you start going through the thing here, like they realize that like, hey, it's actually happening. And yes, here he is. Like, I picked it up. I'm impressed. I can't believe myself. You know, so it came out like a lot earlier than they thought it was going to come out. I had another thread that I thought I had linked to, but this is a different one. But if you go into like the Google group search, because they have archived Usenet going all the way back. And if you're ever looking for, you know, what people were saying about stuff back then, like this was a big deal that suddenly the Saturn was available. because nobody expected it to show up when it did. So it was super, super quick. All right, so let's go over. All right, so let's try. Trying to see what I have on here. Panzer Dragoon. So I have I thought I put a Japanese game on here, didn't I? Yeah, I did. Okay. The game Paradise. Right. Okay. So let's do Daytona, USA, and then we'll go over to the Japanese game. So I don't have too many on here. Okay. I still have to get my collection boosted up here. All right, let's try one. 3, 2, 1. All right, did I end on me last time? Let's see where we ended up. Saturn Part 1. Let's look at where I dropped the last clip. Oh, did I not record what I just did? I think I did. Edit. Yeah, we did. This was it right here. 11 Saturn. So bear with me for 1 second. I just want to make sure this clip is something I can live with here. All right, so here we go. The game is up and running. It loaded up without too many issues. We had the FMV going at the outset here, and it seems like we've got the ability here to play Saturn games just off of that SSD that we have installed. Pretty cool stuff. Let's check out some other things. Okay. All right, so we're good there. So let's jump back to, I'm just trying to figure out, like, this is, what's great about this thing is that it works and it's simple. All right, yeah, so let me go back to my Saturn story. So I had a 3DO, and those of us who had the 3DO, we were very active on the Usenet group for that. And I think we all knew that the end was coming. Like, 3DO had like so it came out, it was $800. It was super expensive. This is $1994, mind you. And then they dropped the price pretty much in half around September, October of '94. That was when I was a freshman in college. And so I went and bought one, knowing that I would be working over the holiday break and could pay it back. So I put it on my credit card, knowing that I could pay it off. I never bought any. I was a very good credit person. I never bought more than I could afford. So it was $3.99. I bought it right when I first started school, and we were like the hit of the dorm building because, you know, this thing was awesome. Like, the games on it were things that you would not see on a home console. Even on a PC, you couldn't do it on, based on what the 3DO could do in some cases. So, so I had that, and then we start, I'm following Usenet, because that was where you got your info, was on Usenet, which was the news groups on the internet. And so I was really closely following all the releases that were coming out, and if there were games coming that my store wasn't getting, I could find places to get them and everything. But then people started talking about the PlayStation, and then Sega was really nervous. You got to read, by the way, Console Wars. I interviewed the author when the book came out, because it really details Sega's rise and fall and all these other systems coming into play. So what happened was the Saturn and the PlayStation were supposed to come out around the same time, but I think Sega in Japan kind of panicked, and they released it, like I said, like March or April. Like, it was so much earlier. It was like 6 months earlier. Like, you walked into the store and the Saturn is at the store. It was crazy. And this is one of those Saturns that was initially released, because this is like a super low number. And as you saw when we took it apart, the power supply was in the door here. But it really ended up hurting Sega significantly, because the retailers were not all the retailers were getting them. So I think Walmart didn't get them. Like, a bunch of major retailers were locked out of this. And so they stopped carrying all of Sega's stuff. And then Sony came out. They were like $100, whatever it was. Sony's price was $299 versus, I forgot what this one was selling for. But they just totally botched the release. And I think the system was rather complicated, because it was initially designed as like a 2D platform with enhanced graphics, and then they added the 3D stuff later. So we didn't take the plate off, but if you look at the system board for the Saturn, it's got chips all over the place. It's incredibly complex. So that was one of the things that happened there. All right. So we're going to do Daytona USA, and then we'll jump to a Japanese game. 3, 2, 1. All right, so let's load up one more game from start to finish here. We'll do a popular title, Daytona USA. And I just pushed the button, and you can see everything loading up. And I was able to boost the gamma on my capture board here in between takes, so it should look a little better. And I'm just going to let the game load as it normally would. So for those of you who have experience with the Saturn, with optical drives, you can kind of get a feel for how long things take to load versus not. And here we go. We are up and running. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Now I've got this really lousy controller with my Saturn that I have to replace. I did order one. There's a Retrobit controller that works with the Saturn, but they're modern. You know, they're selling them now. So that is coming in soon. I'm looking forward to playing around with that. So let me just jump into a quick race here, and we'll just see how fast things go. And you can tell me how it looks to you. All right, C to choose. There we go. So we're going to do the beginner track here. And like I said, this controller is really bad. So, but you can see how clear the video is coming off of that RetroTink 2X that I've got installed on this. It's really good. So what I did also for connectivity on the Saturns, I don't think I covered this a second ago, is I'm using HD Retrovision cables, and my controller is totally shot here. I'm using HD Retrovision cables with a RetroTink 2X, which is a really good pairing for modern TVs. And unfortunately, my controller just is not playable. The game actually does work, but unfortunately, the controller here is just not cooperating. Let's, though, take a look at a Japanese time. Yeah, I think I want to do this all over again because my controller is messing up, and I wanted to explain this better. Yeah, so that was the other thing with Sony, as Inferno points out, is that when they released it, they did a mic drop at E3. It was like the first E3, I think, also, right? It was the very first one. Look at that. It just resets to... so let's reset here real quick. So they just came up to the mic, and he just said $299 because it was so much cheaper. So I ended up buying a PlayStation. You know, I was hoping that, you know, that the 3DO would survive, but no luck. I think what Sega should have done is they should have really built out the 32X as their platform just to hold them over, because if they could have gotten, you know, 2 or 3 years out of the 32X, and then they released the Dreamcast, which really did leapfrog the, you know, I think if they had put their effort into making the Dreamcast and taken the time versus rushing something out, I think they would have been more successful. All right. So let me go and jump into the next one. All right, so, all right, we're going to do it this way. 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we're going to load up a popular title, Daytona USA, and I'm just going to hit the button here on my controller to load it. And I'm just going to let this run out so you can see exactly how long things take to load, especially if you have experience with these Sega devices and optical media. Now, what I have it hooked up to right now is a RetroTink 2X line doubler with HD Retrovision cables. The HD Retrovision cable I'm using is the one I was using with my Sega Genesis, but they sell an adapter cable, and it gives you a super clean image, as you can see here. We boosted up the gamma on my video capture hardware, so it's a little bit brighter than it was before, but it just looks great. And when I go back upstairs to my CRT television, this is going to look super crisp on that TV. You can see here things load up pretty quickly, and it's working just as well as it would with optical media. Good stuff. So let's take a look now at some games from overseas. I've got a Japanese title that we're going to try to load up now on my US Saturn. I think that worked. That's a good take, I think. What do you all think? All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I am super pleased with this, and I'm also super pleased that I have the old Saturn, because it was a lot easier to load that up, wasn't it? Okay. So now the question is, I probably should just get another one of these, one for the Dreamcast and one for the Saturn. And you know what's funny with me is that I spend more time just fiddling with hardware than I do actually playing the games on it. I'm trying to do more game playing. And my kids are getting into games, but my kids love the Nintendo Switch. We've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing. My daughter loves Animal Crossing. And it's been fun. It's actually a good economics lesson for her, too. So let me just play this back real quick, and then we'll continue on. 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we're going to load up a popular title, Daytona USA. and I'm just going to hit the button here on my controller to load it. And I'm just going to let this run out so you can see exactly how long things take to load, especially if you have experience with these Sega devices and optical media. Now, what I have it hooked up to right now is a RetroTink 2X line doubler with HD Retrovision cables. The HD Retrovision cable I'm using is the one I was using with my Sega Genesis, but they sell RetroTink 2X line doubler with HD Retrovision cables. The HD Retrovision cable I'm using is the one I was using with my Sega Genesis, but they sell an adapter cable, and it gives you a super clean image, as you can see here. We boosted up the gamma on my video capture hardware, so it's a little bit brighter than it was before. But it just looks great, and when I go back upstairs to my CRT television, this is going to look super crisp on that TV. You can see here things load up pretty quickly, and it's working just as well as it would with optical media. Good stuff. So let's take a look now at some games from overseas. I've got a Japanese title we're going to try to load up now on my US Saturn. Good stuff. Reshoot that transition. So let me just make a note of that, and then, so I was like slurring my words. I'm getting tired. Once I hit like 4:30, I'm done. It's funny, like I have to get my videos like shot in a certain window, otherwise I start losing my ability to talk properly. I think it's my age. Lots of great discussion, by the way, in the chat, and I apologize for missing so much here. But yeah, I was really into the 3DO. I've got a lot of titles on the 3DO. And I think it's a very underappreciated system because it is, hang on one second here, cut after, good stuff. The games were great. EA took, the former CEO of EA, Trip Hawkins, was the guy behind 3DO. And their vision was to create a licensed technology that they would then sell to other companies. So Panasonic bit first, but LG, which back then was Lucky Gold Star, they made a system. There was one, it was Gold Star made one, there was the Panasonic one, there was one other one. I forgot who was the other one. And they all had systems that all played the same games, but they're all manufactured by different companies. And I had the original, the Panasonic one. Actually, I am going to do a live stream with my 3DO one day because it's got some cool games on it. And it was great. I mean, it was so far ahead of its time because think about it, when that came out, all these 3D, there was none of that. So my local Babbage's next to where my college was at the mall there, that's where I got my 3DO because we were walking by one day. So what we would do, so here was the deal with my school. Tuesday and Thursday, there was a long break in between classes. So you have your morning classes, and they had basically a set time Tuesday and Thursday for clubs to meet. And at that point, I was a freshman. I wasn't that involved with any clubs. So my friends and I would go to the mall every Tuesday and Thursday. And there was a great burger place there. And so we would grab lunch, and then we'd go up to the game store, because what else would you do there? And as we were walking by Babbage's in the window, we're seeing this version of Road Rash I had never seen before. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Couldn't believe how awesome it looked. And what do you know? It was the 3DO. And I had played with a 3DO. Long story, but this friend of a friend had one, and he worked at a software store, so he had the whole library. And it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. The video quality, the 3D graphics, but Road Rash hadn't been out when I first saw the system a few months prior. And so that sold me. I was like, this is amazing. It's arcade quality, even though the frame rate, if you watch it today, is just, not good. But it was just mind-blowing. So this was like the real hit of the dorm, as I said, and we were really into it. And then as Sony started jumping into the market, there was pretty much, everyone knew like no one would be able to compete with the marketing muscle that Sony would bring to the mix. And PlayStation just dominated. Very early on. And it was funny because you look at Ridge Racer now and it just looks, it doesn't look that great, right? But the frame rate of the 3D graphics was so fluid compared to everything else that people were playing with, including the PC, that it was just a whole different ballgame. It really was amazing for people. And that's what made the difference there. All right, so I think 3, 2, 1. All right, so now let's take a look at a title from overseas. I've got a Japanese game we're going to load up here. This is the game Paradise. It's one I read about, I was very interested in, and this is a US Saturn, but if I hit the button here, we should be able to load it right up without having to solder on any modifications or do anything really. It should just come up and load. So I'm just going to let this run out just like it would normally in real time here, so we can just see how fast the load times are. And hopefully this Japanese title will start playing here on my US Saturn. And what's great about this is that I've had this Saturn for so long, and I've been meaning to do some kind of modifications to it so I could play some more of these games, and I never got around to it. So the fact that this thing was so easy for me to install really made this a very attractive option. I'm probably going to have to buy 2 of these things, or at least buy another one, to have one in my Dreamcast and one in my Saturn now. And we'll go ahead here and just start a quick game and see how this is all working. But so far, so good. I think this is working pretty nice. And you can see the real power of this. So I don't think there really has been a decent drive emulator for the Saturn that was this easy to install. So I'm just really, really, really pleased. All right, so let's let the game load up here. And I bet you this load time is significantly shorter than it normally would be otherwise. There you go. Cool stuff. I have a cousin that speaks very fluent Japanese, so I'm going to have to invite him over when he's back in the country and have him translate for me. But as you can see here, all is good. Good stuff. Well, I'm really happy here. This is a great product, I think. And I think once again, Terraonion has shown us just how good they are at making very complex things easy for those of us who are not so great at soldering to get these old systems doing things that they were not doing just a couple of weeks ago, actually. So this was a really nice surprise to see this product announced. Really nice to finally be able to use my Saturn a little bit more. I just had a couple of games, so I'm eager to start diving into the library, especially some of the Japanese titles that I've never played with. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos about some of the great things on the Saturn, and that's something I'm really eager to try out. The one issue I would say with this is that it's certainly not a portable product. So I've got mine installed in the Saturn right now. I could, leave the screws out and just lift the thing up and uninstall it and reinstall it someplace else. But I think if you are intending to use this with both the Dreamcast and the Saturn, you probably want to buy 2 just to leave them in their respective consoles. But it's nice to know you could, move one to the other and be able to boot it up in either system, and the mode here just detects what system it's in and it just gets going. There's really nothing to configure on it, and I think that's one of its greatest strengths. So good stuff here from Terraonion. We previously looked at their Mega SD cartridge for the Sega Genesis that also replicated a Sega CD right on the cartridge. So this is some really good stuff from a company that's been cranking out some really cool things for all of these 90s consoles. And we'll have to see what they do next with this. I'm really interested to see what they might do with the expansion capabilities that they built into the mode. So we'll definitely be coming back to this in the future. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. All right. You know what's amazing is that I did a whole shoot in about 2 hours, including the installation. Normally, it takes me this long just to shoot the video. So once again, I think having all of you watching me do this really helps. So, but I am super impressed with this. This is great. We had a lot of people watching also, so it looks like there's a lot of viewer interest in it as well. So that's great to me. So let's take a look at that real quick. 3, 2, 1. All right, so now let's take a look at a title from overseas. I've got a Japanese game we're going to load up here. This is the game Paradise. It's one I read about, I was very interested in. And this is a US Saturn, but if I hit the button here, we should be able to load it right up without having to solder on any modifications or do anything really. It should just come up and load. So I'm just going to let this run out just like it would normally in real time here, so we can just see how fast the load times are. And hopefully this Japanese title will start playing here on my US Saturn. And what's great about this is that I've had this Saturn for so long, and I've been meaning to do some kind of modifications to it so I could play some more of these games, and I never got around to it. So the fact that this thing was so easy for me to install really made this a very attractive option. I'm probably going to have to buy 2 of these things, or at least buy another one to have one in my Dreamcast and one in my stuff. Well, I'm really happy here. This is a great product, I think. But it's nice to know. Good. I think that came out how I wanted it to come out. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. Like, my family's coming home soon, so I've got to I got to get ready to transition to dinner cooking mode. But yeah, the Sega, so the Dreamcast had the Bleem emulator. There's some discussion about that in the chat room here. And that was actually worked pretty well. And the games looked better when you ran them on the Dreamcast. But Sony sued the Bleem people pretty much out of existence. And there was another emulator on the Mac that ran PlayStation as well. So David Tuttle says this is good for background sound. Yeah, a lot of people watch me as I'm as they're doing their work, as I'm doing mine right now. So it's really helpful. I like to put on stuff too. If I'm editing video, I obviously can't watch what people are doing, but it's good here. I think I might just leave my Saturn and Dreamcast like unscrewed just so I can swap them around. But if you're just tuning in, this is what we installed. And it was super simple. I mean, you just take the cables that were connected to the optical drive and you plug them into the card. All the same connectors are there. And it just knows what it's plugged into. And you could load the whole library on one of these. You buy one of these terabyte-sized drives. I was told in the chat room that you could just plug in about a terabyte for the Saturn library and maybe 2 for the Dreamcast, and you're good to go. So you could put the drive in, just seal it back up again, and you're done. I might experiment with USB and stuff and see how that goes. Because part of it too is I want to be able to swap out the drive easily, so that might be why I just leave these things just open and just go from there. But yeah, it works great. So apparently I've got one of the launch systems. I was looking at it earlier today and I said, the serial number here, check out my serial number. The serial number on this is super low. This is 23,848. So it's a super early version of the Saturn. And my Dreamcast is a launch Dreamcast. I bought it launch day. So it worked good. Aaron says that NBA Showtime will be fixed on the next firmware. I'll make a note to, I'll put a little lower third in there or something just to let people know about that. And I'm guessing there'll be a lot of like one-off little firmware fixes, right, to do all that. So we'll get that going. Yeah, but I'm excited because I've really, for a long time, have wanted to do just kind of explore the Saturn because I've seen I watch everything you all watch. I love those videos of, Metal Jesus does and everybody in that crew and all the other folks that do a lot of retro stuff. And I've had this and I just haven't been able to do anything with it. So now I can. I mean, how awesome is that? So yeah, this is good. It's really good. Yeah, so if you are looking to, I would just go in and buy 2 of them. One for each system, right? So Herman Payne wants to know, can you still have the CD drive installed? No, so you are taking the CD drive out because the connectors that this would have worked with are going to be used for something else. But you know what? These CD drives are not lasting, right? I mean, this one was working, and the Dreamcast one I had was working, but at some point they're going to fail. I mean, look at this; it's got like plastic gears on it that are going to wear out, and it's just a matter of time. So no, it completely replaces the optical drive. So yeah, you are making some changes, but you know what? They're not permanent because in the end, I could decide I'm going to put it aside and store it, right? Okay, I think we're back now. We should be back. There we are. Okay. Yeah, so all of this network problem is going to be done soon. As soon as, like I said, I filled out all the paperwork for the Gigabit Pro, so it should be coming. I don't know how they're getting it here, but it's coming. So we're going to have a good connection rolling forward. But you can see why I need it, because this is what happens whenever we're streaming. And so what I'm doing now is I'm paying for Amazon's Media Live service. So what that does is it gives me the ability to stream through Amazon. So when I have one of these network glitches with Comcast, Amazon will drop in that slate and say network issue, right? Isn't that cool? So that's been working pretty good. Okay, well, everybody. Ken Driggers wants to know what my current upstream is. So currently my upstream is 12 megabits per second. And what I do on the stream, so I'm simulcasting to both YouTube and to Amazon Shopping. So before I was pushing 2.5 megabit streams up, so 5 megabits total. And what I ended up doing is having Amazon do that for me. So now what we're doing is we're bifurcating the stream out from Amazon. So I do 2.5 to Amazon. Amazon gets the feed and then sends it to their shopping site and then also sends it over to YouTube. So that's how that's working. So that's how we're going to do that. MG4 wants to know, I said I was going to start going 4K. I was watching your backup strategy video the other day. Will be going 4K mean 4x the amount of data? Yeah, I don't think it'll be quite 4x, but it'll be more data to back up. But I'm using, for the YouTube backup, I'm sending my videos to Glacier, so the cost isn't that bad. It's like super low. So whatever it's going to cost, it'll be minimal. If I was doing S3, it would certainly increase the cost of storage, no doubt. Because yeah, I was looking back, I haven't done too many 4K videos, but the one that I did last year from SpaceX, the SpaceX launch we went to, that one was about 8 gigabytes for the 15 or 20 minutes that it ran for. So it's definitely a lot more. Red Rush wants to know what's the cost for the 2 gig fiber. So it's for me, it's going to be $300 a month. It's a lot, because you can get, if you lived in an area with competition, it would cost you less. And actually, I don't even need 2. I just could use the 1. In fact, I'd be good with half a gigabit. Yeah, so we'll see where it goes. Tech with Sean says 4K 60, choose space up fast. Yeah, I'm going to be doing 30. These cameras don't do 60, so I'll start with 30 and then we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, the 60 will certainly chew things up. And I don't know if YouTube accepts HEVC yet, do they? I don't think they do. But maybe what I'll do is is back up in HEVC, just output an HEVC version for backup. Yeah, Ken, my 3. So I have 3 cameras. I got the overhead and the two here. These are like JVC whatevers. They're not great, but I got them initially because I needed something that could do 1080p 30 out the HDMI, because I learned that most of these systems were not doing that. Most of these cameras you buy do 1080i out the HDMI, at least on the consumer side. So that's how that goes. Yeah, so an arm and a leg. It is an arm and a leg, but the good news is that at least it's for the channel, which is my business. So it's important to have a functional stream. So, and I could write off the cost. But yeah, it's not cheap. Eric says he does everything at 1080p 30 because it takes so long to upload, and that's exactly why I do it as well. I could be 4K right now. I couldn't be before. So what happened was I'm not using the TriCaster anymore, and I still need to do that video about what we're doing here. But I'm not using the TriCaster anymore. And so I've got my vMix system that's running everything, and it should be able to handle it. So right now, I'm just looking at my thing here. So I have an i9 processor, the 9900K or whatever, and then my CPU right now is like 3%. Isn't that crazy? I got all these cameras going in. I got the NDI going through here. I got everything going, 3%. The GPU is what vMix uses the most, and I have a GTX 1080 in there right now, And so that'll be the big question as to whether or not it can handle 4K. I did initially do an experiment just to see what one camera would be, and it didn't seem like it was that much of an impact. And my cameras are all going in directly. So I have a Blackmagic Decklink card that has 4 HDMI inputs on it, and that takes everything in. So yeah, it's an 8-core processor, and vMix is just, I mean, this system is never taxed at all. And my GPU memory is at 14% with this current setup here. So I think we would be using more of the system resources, and I think the GPU could be a bottleneck. So I'll experiment, and if it works, it works. If not, I'll go back to 1080p and get a new GPU. But it seems to be working well. And it's great because this was the GPU that was in my gaming computer, and I had set it aside knowing I was going to look at using